everybody, welcome back to the Dementia Road, where today we're going to kind of make the shift. And this part is something that's always been kind of near and dear to me, and I've watched throughout my life, specifically with my mom, that you've all seen in the dementia videos. But I've always had this real strong spiritual sense for whatever reason. Some people just, I think, are just born that way. I think my mother was born that way as well, and she was a big influence in that. She was big into praying and praying for people, and that's how kind of how I grew up. And I always knew, because of that, that there was a plan and a purpose, and there's one for everybody, but most people really don't hit it. I don't think we know it, and I think that the way Christianity has presented it has left a lot to be desired, for sure. So what I want to take a look at is the concept of destiny. What are we doing here? What is our plan? What is our purpose? Are we all just, I don't know, hanging out waiting to die? I don't know. What is it? And so I'll give you just kind of a little bit of my backstory. I'm going to start actually with the fact that I knew I was going to write a book. I didn't know what the book was. And I did finish it, and when I finished it, or I was in the editing phase of it, the folks that I worked with said, you really need a landing page, just a simple landing page. God has other ideas, and I ended up having to build a website, which I suck at that stuff, and it took me forever to build it, but I built a website and I blog, and you can go there and check it out. It's lifeunderdeborahspalm.com, and I'll put a link in the description below as well. You'll see my story. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. It's on the webpage. I might as well have called myself the reluctant blogger. It wasn't something that I ever felt that I would do, and you'll see there's not a lot there yet. It's an up-and-coming thing. Feel free to check it out. So I guess my spiritual backstory, as I said, I kind of always felt like God was around. I don't know why, other than probably my mother. That's how she was, and kind of even still is in the midst of dementia. The sun's gonna come over here and blind me, but it's so nice out. So the spiritual things, here's what... crows. In a quick overview of God stuff, some of the things I've seen in my life, some through my mother's prayers, some through other things, is I've actually seen my father, he died about 10 years ago now, but I saw him healed twice. Once of severe back problems when he was probably in his 50s, and when he hit 80, he was, I don't want to say diagnosed with cancer because they never got that far, but he had been a smoker and worked in an environment where there was diesel, and they were 99% sure he had cancer. Stupid crow. They were sure he had cancer. He had 3 spots on his lung. I saw those disappear, and they never did. I cannot actually say or confirm that it was cancer because we never got that far, thankfully. I also saw my mom. She had a basal cell carcinoma. The doctor told her that's what it was. It was huge. It was like the size of an egg, and she had been ignoring it, and that's typical of my mother. And this was about 10 years ago, and I'm like, I'm gonna pray for you until the day you go have that removed, because it was so big she actually had to have it done in a hospital and couldn't have it done just in the doctor's office. So I prayed over that. And it did not go completely away, but it got down to, it went from literally being an egg that the doctor, it was actually a surgeon that thought he was going to have to go deep into the tissue, to being this big. It was about the size of a dime. And he was stunned, and he said, he came out after the surgery and looked at me and said, I know what I saw in that office. That's not it. This stuff doesn't go away. I know that was basal cell carcinoma. He sent it to be biopsied twice because it came back a boil. I don't believe for a second that's what it was. You can take that or leave that. Think of it however you want. I personally have been healed of, stupid crow. Personally, I've been healed of the flu and never got it again, ever. And I was very susceptible to it. I've also been through things, you know, if you're one of those people that you've struggled with fear or anxiety or panic attacks or anything like that, I went through a thing about 5 or 6 years ago where I would wake up in the middle of the night with my heart literally racing for absolutely no reason. But being the way that I am, and as far down the road as I am from the, I guess from the Christian perspective, or from that spiritual perspective, I believe God talks, and I just waited on him and said, what is going on with this? And I went through a long-ish thing where ultimately that ended. The problem was not physical. It was not a physical issue. It was actually a fear. Fear was the root of it. It was causing some kind of anxiety and panic attack or something in the middle of the night. Totally got through that. Have a family member that just went through a COVID battle, and immediately when I started, or when, it wasn't me, immediately when we got the diagnosis that there was COVID, I just laid in bed one night and said, okay, God, I'm not going to panic over this. I'm not going to get fearful. I'm not going to get scared. I'm just going to let you do what you want to do. You tell me how to pray for this. And it took 5 hours, and I got thing after thing after thing on how to pray for this person. And by morning, the person said, I felt the shift in the middle of the night. Like all of a sudden, I went from not being able to breathe to being much better. And within just a few days, it was gone, and there were no lingering effects, no long-term effects, and no loss of smell, no real serious issues that people have had with COVID. Now, granted, I know Christians die of COVID and cancer and things all the time, but God's moving in different ways right now. I don't like the way Christianity is generally presented because, and my experience has been this, where I had someone in my life and it started when I was really young, who was just one of these people that went, so, are you saved? Do you know if you don't accept Jesus in your heart right now, if you die in the middle of the night, you're going to go to hell? I was like 9 years old, and this went on for years. And honestly, I got to the point where I thought, if I got to go to heaven and hang out with you, you're annoying. Is this what this is about? No, bad attitude. But I don't like that presentation. I think that is just shoving things down people's throat. And although biblically that's true, I don't think that's the way Jesus intended for people to see things. Or, you know, I think that we're smart people. I think that we can make an informed decision. And so what I want to do is just present some things so that you can take a look and say, maybe it is real. Maybe it's not. And that's okay too. If you don't like it, move on, go ahead. But I think that there's just a different way to look at it. So somebody's saying, hey, here's Jesus, and you have to believe in him right now, because if you die in a fiery car wreck, you're going to hell. I think that's the equivalent of me going, hey, I want you to meet my friend here physically. Say I have a friend. Her name's Susie Q. Susie Q's the best, and if you need to just do what she tells you to do and go where she tells you to go, and right now I want you to do that. I would head for the hills. What rational person is going to do that? Now, there's a spirituality that comes with Jesus, and I have seen people that just was what they needed right at that time, and it works. If it's not like presented because somebody's concerned about you, not because they want to shove fear so far down your throat that you're just like, okay, or they're so annoying you just want to get rid of them. Been there too. Had people just drive me crazy. If you went to church at one point in your life, they just totally turned you off to God and church and religion, and you just said, I don't want any part of that. You found out they were a bunch of hypocrites. They talked bad about people. They were out smoking, drinking, doing everything that supposedly you weren't supposed to do or you weren't told to do, and you find out that they're just a bunch of hypocrites. I'm going to ask you to just step back for a second. God's not a hypocrite. People are. People are flawed. People are messy. People are obnoxious and rude and a bunch of other things. But God is not. So what happens when you run into people in churches like that? What ends up happening is you make God the God of your experiences with people in churches. Okay, you're connecting the two together, and they can be vastly different. God's a God of relationship, not a God of religion. You can do anything religiously. You can get up and ride your bike 20 miles every morning religiously, okay? So if that's you, just hold on. Try this again. I'm going to tell you this. If you're sitting there like you're thinking you're a hot mess and there is no way God's interested in you, and maybe if you get a little better, you can show up. That's not true either. I used to think, I guess I just assumed it, that the Bible was full of these holy people who did what God told them to do, had these amazing experiences, and did awesome things, and did whatever God told them, and whatever. And yet I would read it, and there would be things that wouldn't make sense. I would read, especially Old Testament stuff. The stories are fantastic, but I would read it, and I'm like, oh, well, he just stole his brother's birthright. And this one's lying, and this one's murdering, and this one's going to a temple prostitute, and the temples are pagan temples. It's not a Jewish temple. We think of Jewish temples. They're sleeping with prostitutes, and they're killing each other, and they're committing adultery, and I couldn't, for a long time, I just could not reconcile those two. Then one day I realized something. The truth of the matter is, Jesus is the only perfect person in the Bible. The rest of them, well, they're just as disastrous as us. Things haven't changed in the last 5,000 years. These disastrous people are exactly who God's looking for. He took people who were afraid, who did all sorts of things, and he used them anyways. One quick example. King David. King David was regarded as, and I'm pretty sure today he's still regarded as one of the best kings Israel had. But the scriptures say in the spring it's the time when the kings go to war. David decided he didn't want to go to war, and he was checking out Bathsheba, who lived next door, while she was taking a bath. Bathsheba was married to a guy named Uriah. Uriah was in David's army. He was out to battle, which is where David was supposed to be, but he wasn't. He was checking out Bathsheba. He sleeps with Bathsheba. Bathsheba becomes pregnant. Well, now he's really got a problem. The king just committed adultery, got the woman pregnant. So he decides to, first he tries to get Uriah to come home and sleep with his wife, thinking, then it'll just look like his kid, and that didn't work. So David sends Uriah to the battle lines and basically has him killed in battle. Now, then he takes Bathsheba and makes Bathsheba his wife. So he thinks he's got the whole thing covered, except there were these guys in the Bible, they were called prophets, that God would send to kings and to help a lot of rulers. Some of them loved the prophet, some of them hated. And a prophet came and basically told David, God saw what you did, and this baby is going to die. And that's exactly what happened. But God being God, the next baby that he conceived with Bathsheba was King Solomon. And when you look at genealogy in the Bible, King Solomon's in the line of Jesus. So God took that mess and made it a blessing. So whatever you're doing and whatever you're into, even if you're messy, I'm telling you, I got the book for you. It's called the Bible. They're just a bunch of people that God used to advance his purposes in the earth. So I want to say a couple things here. So if we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about Jesus and present this. One of the things that we're going to have to take a look at is the Bible, because that's the book that writes all about him. What I'm going to do is kind of start from the beginning of, let's take a look at the Bible, how it was put together, how it came to be historically, and then we'll move into like, how do you choose a Bible? Because there's a billion different kinds out there. But from there, once we get going, I will explain church history. How did we get from there to here? Along with things like God does speak. And some people, it goes against the church you were brought up in. Some people don't believe that. That's okay. That's your choice. But God does speak. He does give direction. He does tell you how to get out of messes. He does all sorts of stuff. But if you can't hear him and you don't know who he is and what he sounds like, you'll never know. So, that's the end of this video. Have a great day.